So we are back with our discussion on army and geopolitics. And in the last episode, we introduced these ideas about how the army actually is the mandate for the army is to actually look at the international border. Therefore, it becomes very important to look at what is happening geopolitically and a geopolitical perspective. In a sense, we introduced what would be a geopolitical perspective. We already admit that yes, the army is looking at the globe territorially, but what about a deeper, how about going a bit deeper? So when we talk about the fact that the army should, or the army needs to broaden its horizon and look at geopolitics, what is it that we mean? So basically, what we mean is that there should be very well structured procedures whereby the army is territorially classifying the globe, and then looking at following up this territorial classification by looking at people, language, religion, culture within these territories, and also a very very thorough resource mapping. So the question would be then, how do you look at these procedures within the army? Also, a geopolitical perspective tells us that we need to look beyond the state as an agent of geopolitics, and we need to look at what NGOs are doing. We need to look at what non-state actors are doing, the broad term non-state actors, which includes a whole range from non-governmental organizations to networks, informal networks, also at various groups, including terror groups, which are situated across throughout the globe. And then my question to you, Colonel Pandey, would be how are we looking at army generating data for all this? Because we are looking at a very thorough research initiative. And also, when having done so much of work, projecting into the future, having done so much of work, then how would we look at where the army is placed? I would take us back to what I said in the last episode about how USA and even Russia, USSR, erstwhile USSR, had its coordination between academia, between the forces, and between policy making. So how do you look at this triad, operating, and what is the role of the army? What should be its reach? And finally, I would say that we are developing a perspective on geopolitical codes. So, which we will, look at what are geopolitical codes. After all, they are, when you are classifying your allies, your enemies, how to deal with your allies, how to deal with your enemies, and how you're looking at maintaining these alliances and weakening your enemies, and that entire, and these codes are not just they are very thorough research based codes. So thereon, I would request you to carry on with the
Yeah,
discussion.
thanks a lot, Professor. There are two things before I cover most of the things that you've said. Without getting into people or persons, if I ask you a generic question, we are in the 75th year of independence.
Right?
We are stressing so much on geopolitics as a knowledge for the armed forces. Why it should be there? Had it been there, what do you think is the biggest blunder independent India has done because we did not have geopolitics as a culture at the higher levels? If I just ask you to put your finger on one event, what would that event be?
That's a very interesting question, and I would say that allowing POJK to take shape, when we had the opportunity to ensure that it would be erased out of it is something like that would not exist. So if we had not allowed POJK to take place today, we would be located in a geopolitically a very strategic place. Wiley nilly, we may show it on our maps. We may say that we may claim territory from our parliament, but facts on ground are that POJK is a territory that is not in our control, and that was the gateway to Central Asia for us, and would also have given us a border with Afghanistan.
I think that is brilliantly said. If there is one region, I would say, instead of coming to only POJK or POK as we call it,
Mm.
I go actually a step further. I also look east and north from there. That entire region, had we paid attention to that region in 47, there are a number of things probably that wouldn't have happened in Indian the last 75 years. Maybe 65 war, 71 war, nothing would have happened. That is the biggest blunder, which started in 1947 with POJK, as Professor Sonali says. But thereafter, the effects of that, you can see what it has manifested into today. We are in 2021, and we are still scared now that Taliban, the excess Taliban, they might come this side. Right. Coming to our episode 2, of which Professor Sonali has given a lot of background, I would straight away come to subject proper. We are talking about armed forces and geopolitics, whether they are involved in that or not. At the onset, I want to make two things very clear. First and foremost, there is a tremendous amount of hesitation in the establishment to let army understand or get into geopolitics. There is a hesitation. I must say that this is a misplaced hesitation. That is one. The second point is internally, the armed forces themselves have not developed that culture where geopolitics comes naturally to the officer cadre. What is happening? You have the finest brains coming, which are good in tactics. They are not good in strategy. If they are good in strategy, they are only good in military strategy. But when it comes to geopolitics, they are absolutely blind. We keep on giving them promotions. The generals keep on rising up. Within army, within armed forces, everyone knows that there is no foundation when it comes to geopolitics. So these two things, if you keep in mind, what I would recommend is that army has to get involved. The establishment has to let army understand geopolitics as a culture. That is one. Secondly, separate out everything that is confidential in nature and keep it as a state secret. You expose only limited people to that. But as a culture, unless it starts, if the armed forces start their work, their job is to protect the borders. So this means they are not expected to look at the hinterland, own country. They are only expected to be looking outside. So with no culture of geopolitics, what do they look outside for? So what has happened is that everyone finally gets constricted to the tactical discussions. And that is so evident when it comes to every TV debate. There is extremely limited thing that people can talk. No one talks about geopolitics. And in one of the discussions that we had about Afghanistan, I simply had put a question that who all share land borders with Afghanistan? What are our relations with those countries? What are their relations with Afghanistan, China? So if you start drawing a picture of all the relations in red and blue lines of all these countries with each other and with every, you will suddenly have a picture and you know exactly where to invest. There is a YouTube clip which comes up, a video comes up. India's secret bases in Indian Ocean, India's secret bases in so and so Central Asia. I think this is very, very incorrect. It can't be secret. It has to be absolutely open. The thing is that we have to matter. We cannot secretively put our two aircraft somewhere and there are say, okay, fine, we have got two. Is a squadron going to control China? You can't. So geopolitics has to come up as a subject because this is where the armed forces will survive. They will thrive here. This is their field. So how do you separate out theoretical, practical knowledge, which is available in public domain, to be available to the better part of the most of the officers, and let the confidential things and everything like that, let it go to the higher ups. Coming down to a very important point which Professor Sonali made, this is about the mapping of the entire thing.
Yeah.
We covered this in the last episode also. As far as the knowledge is concerned of the mechanics of to how to go about it, Indian Army does a wonderful job in the CI areas. The thing is, the whatever they do in CI areas about their own area of responsibility, whether it is a battalion, brigade, or even a division size force, or coming down to a company or a platoon level, or a company post, COB, what they call. So they have tremendous knowledge. The thing is that we don't extrapolate this to the international level. That's exactly the point. And that is precisely what the professor is bringing out. That unless we do that, how do we even know geopolitics of the region, of our neighborhood? How exactly are we going to be employed, or we are going to be asked to respond? Militarily, if we do not have the geopolitics in mind, how do we equip ourselves? We cannot be equipping ourselves 24/7, keeping Pakistan in mind. And suddenly now, because Galwan has come, everyone now talks about two front war. No one had heard about two front war before Galwan. So suddenly, where do these terms come in from? So they come in from reactive nature of our army, of our nation. This again is something that I had covered earlier. We are reactive. So we cannot be reactive.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, can I interject?
Yeah, yeah,
Can I
please, please,
just
please.
take a because I somehow what you've said so far makes me feel that see, I'm not an army person, or I'm not a strategist, or but what I feel is that you are saying that, for instance, if we have to deal with China, then we have to go beyond our borders in understanding China in a better way, so that we can commit our resources, our policy can be geared to that particular, if I may use the word, theater.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
And are we saying the same thing about similarly we rationalize our uh, theater, which is Pakistan? So is that what you're saying? Is that what you're trying to
Exactly, exactly. This is what I'm saying. We want to deal with China. Theoretically, yeah, we are dealing with China. I want to know what exactly are we doing in that. Practically, how do we convert this? We have not even accepted that China is our enemy. We say Pakistan is our enemy. We are scared to say China is our enemy. So, unless in geopolitics you talk about your allies, you talk about your enemies, you talk about neutral states which you want to make your allies, how exactly do we proceed? So, we want to deal with China, but we do not have tactics. We don't even declare them as enemy. We want to deal with China, we don't have commands. We want to deal with China, we don't have equipment. The point is why? Because we are lacking application of geopolitical knowledge in the armed forces, which actually, after some time, you will agree, will start dictating the type of weaponry that we should be having, the type of the reach we should be having beyond our IB. Having satellites, having photographs, having this thing to organizations, confidential in nature, that is entirely a different thing. But having geopolitics as a culture, having such a massive brain bank, I will say, armed forces officers, they don't think. And they don't think not because they cannot. They don't think because there is no culture, firstly, and they've got nothing else to do.
yeah.
So that's why they don't do. And that's why these problems remain unresolved. Right? Uh, Quickly, I'll deal with two more topics, what the professor has already said. Quickly, one is non-state agents. Non-state agents, conventionally, what we have been talking of, I think we have gone beyond the conventional definition of non-state agents or non-state actors, whatever we used to say. It otherwise would be the terrorists or this, that. No. It no more is a terrorist or a NGO or a NGO with a particular aim, or societies or groups of people who have been. No, I think we have gone much beyond that. Today, when we talk about NGO, you would have heard about those companies, finance apps. China has been putting
Yeah,
in
yeah,
the Indian mobiles,
yeah.
where people simply apply for a loan, and thereafter they are trapping. They are giving them money. The thing is that how the enemy is inserting itself inside your mind is what NGO is today. That agent is the non-state agent is actually a state which is putting its entire energy behind number of its arms to actually intrude in the mind of enemy. So it can be as simple as an app which simply gives you 50,000 rupees loan. And once I get 50,000 rupees loan in my bank, I say I will change my SIM card and I will not respond to the phone calls. You don't even realize the guy is very happy.
Yeah.
So non-state agents, when we say, they are everywhere. They are in finance sector, they are in business, they are in startups, they are funding, they are in media, they are in academics, they are in your institutions. So when we talk about this, unless you have more number of brains in a country thinking about all this, till that time you will never even understand what a non-state agent is. Keeping all this in mind, 1 minute, and I hand you over to conclude this particular session. Unless the armed forces have a radical shift in their thinking now, only then we are going to be prepared a decade hence. That is the amount of time it takes. We have to change our thinking. Geopolitics has to become a culture in the army to discuss right from the commissioning days, right from the academy. It has to become. The training has to be shifted over from the conventional tactical training limited to the ditch come band in Punjab or a BOP in Rajasthan, and entire even a lieutenant general, his thinking has been curtailed by one BOP or by the next hill. We do not want a lieutenant general to think anything less than 50, 60, 100, 200 kilometers from the border or even the next nation. But here we are having a captain and a lieutenant general think about the same target. We have to have this radical shift. Towards this, the last point, all the three armed forces simply need to do one thing: 10 years service, 20 years service, 30 years service of officers, the physical service. Put down aims. By 10 years, officers should know this, all the three services. By 20, 10 to 20, they should know this. 20 to 30, they should know this. You do this, it takes 1 decade for the first lot to graduate to the second one. And that's how this culture will come.
Yeah,
Over to you.
yeah. Thank you, Colonel Pandey. I think at least two, I can sense two broad, very important things that have come out from this discussion. Firstly, that, yeah, right from the commissioning days, there has to be a culture within the army, and it has to be institutionalized in terms of procedures, in terms of research capacity, capacity building of that kind in, in the area of geopolitics. So you need to know more than just how to deal with our officers need to know how more than how to just deal with a piece of territory as a piece of territory, but to look at it beyond just as borders and look at it in a more dynamic way, which is fair enough. Because and I'm sure, like, I'm sure many brilliant, bright officers, because we have the best going into the army, so they would be doing this at a personal level, but we are talking about an institutionalization. So
Absolutely.
that is the thing that you have very well pointed out here. And the other thing that you have pointed out is, I'll take about 10 seconds. You have pointed out how the very definition of strategy war is changing, and how that broader perspective of, we need to go beyond the state as a geopolitical actor, and we need to be able to broaden our horizon to look at these, the changing definitions of war. And with that, I will say that we wind up this episode and we look at some very interesting discussions in our upcoming episode.
The next episode that we should plan is today's discussion actually brings us down to what should the armed forces do.
Yeah,
So I think that if we talk about allies, if we talk about our enemies, if we talk about the threats, if we carry
yeah,
out a SWOT analysis,
yeah,
and how exactly all this is done in the academic field of
yeah,
geopolitics,
yeah,
suitably modified for the armed forces.
yeah, yeah.
So that actually would be our next episode,
Mm.
and
Which
something to do
is,
with geopolitical
yeah,
codes.
yeah, which is,
If you can
like I
just tell
said,
him, yeah.
that this is how you develop geopolitical codes. And what are geopolitical codes? They're a mapping of your allies, your enemies, and how you maintain them, and basically how a country is positioning itself in the world globally. That is called a geopolitical code. And if we systematically study the geopolitical codes of USA, of erstwhile USSR, of Germany, and come down, on a temporal scale to current geopolitical codes, and start developing our own expertise in that area. So that will be what we will be talking about in our next episode.
Yeah, so with that, we conclude this particular session. Now we go over to the episode 3 from here, where we'll be extensively talking about geopolitical codes. Thank you so much, and thank you so much, Professor Sonali.
Thank you,
Thank
Karan
you so
Pande.
much.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye.